Hey there guys, welcome back to another one of these kind of laptop Dave with the face cam videos. Today I want to talk about some of the crazy stuff that X-Men are doing and a competitive aspect, a competitive mind to it. So for those who don't know, there is a regional event in Vegas, I believe the weekend of January 8th, that me and Jordan are looking to go to. And as it's a more highly competitive event, I'm looking to bring X-Men. One, because I love X-Men, and two, because there are some shenanigans that they have been up to with the latest couple sets. If you remember, we've made a couple videos on what these guys can do and what some of my favorite X-Men are, but I wanted to kind of put everything in one video, try to poll our community, because there's definitely been some great ideas, some figures that you guys have seen for some of our teams that I've completely missed. So I've been thinking about this list, these things that I could maybe be working with for about a week now. I want to throw it to you guys, see if you guys can come up with anything on your own, or if we can come up with some stuff, some brainstorming ideas together. Definitely be checking in on the comments on this video for the next couple weeks, definitely up to January 8th, and probably a little bit afterwards, because I am very excited for what these X-Men figures are doing, specifically before the Batman team-up set when we get some item changes. After that, a lot of this is probably going to change, but at least for now, this is what I'm looking at. So there's a couple different kind of groups of shenanigans that I would put these into. A lot of it revolves around this Professor X. We're going to go over this figure first. This is the X-Men Rise and Fall Professor X. He's the swap out Professor X, and this recruiting for a future threat is the ability that we're going to be taking a look at. So he says, at the beginning of the game, you may replace up to 5 friendly characters with the same number of characters from your sideline on their starting clicks. All replacements and replaced characters must have the X-Men, Shi'ar, or Illuminati keywords and different names. The total points of the replacement characters can't exceed the total points of the replaced characters. So, what does this functionally mean? Well, basically, for the longest time, this just meant that X-Men get to counterpick you, because there's so many X-Men figures, and a lot of them have, like, and I'm adjacent to you, you can't use super senses, or they can get through stop clicks, or stuff like that. You basically get to look at what your opponent's team is doing, figure out what they're doing, and then bring in pieces that can counter them. That's like the base level 1 ability for this. There's a couple different figures, like this Kate Pryde from House of X, that says, this trait is the only one we care about, at least the tiny dragon, at the beginning of the game, generate a Lockheed bystander. Now that Lockheed bystander is a little sidestep, perplex piece that's kind of useful. And so with timing of, if you go first, with this Professor X, your Kate Pryde starts on your force. It's the beginning of the game. She generates a Lockheed bystander next to her. And then, since it's still the beginning of the game, Professor X will trigger, and he will swap the Kate Pryde off for another figure that has all of its value on his dial, and you get that Lockheed for free. Another pretty common one is the Dazzler from Avengers Empire. It says, during force construction, choose up to 2 friendly characters that share a keyword with Dazzler, and choose either Shield team ability or X-Men team ability. The chosen characters can use that chosen ability this game. That's this ability right here. So you can give 2 of your figures the Shield team ability, which is one of the best team abilities in the game, so that's very nice. And then you swap Dazzler off and bring in a real piece instead, right? So this is primarily like the kind of second level of what the X-Men swap has been doing. There's also a cable piece that a lot of people like, but I personally don't like, so I'm not going to go over it. I mostly just like that Kate Pryde and this Dazzler piece as the kind of pieces that you're abusing to swap, get their abilities, and then swap them out. And then bring in new pieces that are going to go crazy. So that's like the second level of stuff. Then there's the third level of stuff, which we're going to go over with this Genesis from the Organized Play event. Doesn't have its picture here on HC Realms, and the Apocalypse also from this event. I was lucky enough to get my hands on both of these, so I've been brewing around these. They have a bunch of shenanigans, a bunch of stuff. They're broken-ass 1,000,000-point, 300-point pieces, but they do have a 35-point line for both the Genesis and the Apocalypse. They're both sword bearers, so you can run them at 40 points, though I find the points to be a little tight, so I'm not. They each have this traded ability that's very similar, but they kind of chain into each other. We'll see what I mean in a minute. So, Genesis here says, when determining theme teams, characters with the Brute, Monster, and Warrior keywords gain the Heroclix keyword. And then she does some other stuff when you guys have Blades Claw Spank, so that's not really what we're worried about. So, Brutes, Monsters, and Warriors can become Heroclix. And then if we look at the Apocalypse from the Organized Play event, we can see that he has a trait that says, when determining theme teams, characters with the Heroclix keyword gain the X-Men keyword. Okay, so now we can bring Brutes, Monsters, and Warriors to Heroclix, and then bring Heroclix to X-Men. And then Professor X can swap out your X-Men. So now we can do stuff with Brutes, Monsters, and Warriors, like what we could do with the Kate Pryde and with the Dazzler. Some of the figures that I found out about are, there's a Carnage Retaliator, Colossus Retaliator, I believe it's this one. Yeah. So this guy says during force, so he's only 10 points, which is nice because we're a little tight for points as we've seen here. So during force construction, you may add 10 points to Carnage's cost up to 5 times for each time you do add a symbiote bystander to your starting force. He's a monster here, so we can turn him from a monster into a Narakan, into an X-Men, pay the extra 10 points to get a bunch of bystanders, and then swap him off. Very similar to what the Cape Pride was doing. There's a couple other options that we have here. The Groot Colossal Retaliator as well is not bad. I believe it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. So at the beginning of the game, you may generate a Dr. Leslie Evans bystander in an opponent's starting area that's friendly to their force, and then if you do, you get 2 Walking Wood bystanders that are decent, and then you can swap him off. He's only 20 points. He is also a monster. I'm fairly familiar with the monsters, just because I built a couple different monster teams, but I'm not as familiar with brutes and warriors. And honestly, there's a lot of figures in Heroclix. I don't want to look through every single one of them. So if you guys are more familiar with brutes and warriors, that have this kind of at the beginning of the game, during force construction style effects that are abusable, let me know. I found a few, like we can see with this Groot and this Carnage, and there's a lot that kind of suck because most of these abilities, they'll say at the beginning of the game, pick an opposing character, I get better when I'm near that opposing character, or something like that, right? They have to be abilities that after the character leaves are still doing something, right? So it's a very specific niche of characters that this falls into, right? So this is kind of the third level of X-Men shenanigans that we can be doing. We can be adding brutes, monsters, and warriors onto our team, still maintaining X-Men theme team, and then swapping them off and bringing stuff in, right? Now, notably, we can't bring monsters, brutes, and warriors in from our sideline. We can only start them on our team and take them off of our team because we can only bring in X-Men, Illuminati, and Shi'ar, and then we can take out X-Men, right? So we turn all these guys into X-Men, move them off the team, and then bring in more X-Men. Speaking of Illuminati and Shi'ar, there is the Mr. Fantastic Bendy Iron Man. This guy. This guy is, as far as I can tell, the only actually good Illuminati piece. He's 30 points, which is nice because our points are quite tight, especially if we're trying to run 35-point Genesis, 35-point Apocalypse, 65-point Cape Pride, 35-point Dazzler, and 25-point Professor X to get all this working. We have like 100 points to work with, right? We have not a lot of budget here. So a lot of these pieces need to be cheap and efficient and good, right? So the main reason that I like running him is because he's a cool outwit. He gets this rally on all fours. A lot of X-Men teams will use rally dice with a Dr. Moira to give out free rallies, which is nice. He's got a trait of plasticity, and you can free action, remove one of his rally dice, choose an opposing character within range and line of fire, and then that character gains immobile, which is nice. He also has, when he's given a move action, afterwards you can destroy all debris terrain markers within range, which is a nice way to deal with stuff that's making terrain, like Molecule Man is the most popular one, or just anything that's like throwing a million barriers around, right? It's nice for him to be able to move in, crack all the barriers, and then have your teams fly in and kill them, right? So this is the only like actually good Illuminati figure that I found. There's a couple others that are like in contention, and a couple of the Shi'ar guys that are in contention, but they're just not good enough, especially now that we can bring in brutes, monsters, and warriors. That opens up a huge plethora of stuff. Namely, stuff like Sicarian Iron Man, right? We don't even have to swap these figures off. We can just play them on our X-Men team, right? This guy's a warrior. So a lot of the broken-ass pieces that people know from competitive Heroclix can now just be played on X-Men, right? You can do all the X-Men shenanigans where you can still counterpick your opponent's team, get free stuff at the beginning of the game, and then also just feel the Sicarian Iron Man, right? Also, this guy has it at the beginning of the game. You can generate 3 standard objects anywhere on the map, right? That can be useful for some X-Men. Now, primarily it's going to be useful for his own abilities, but we can also just run him. We can run things like Sky Tyrant, who is just a... his low dial is typically what he's run at, 50 points of a, where's the ability? Flurry, charge, but do not have speed. So he has 11 movement, charge, flurry, quake, exploit, weakness, right? That's what this character is known for, running at your opponent's backline and eating them alive, right? He is a monster, plays very well with the Venom Magneto, which X-Men team and monster teams are already running. You can telekinesis the Sky Tyrant, send him flying into your opponent's backline, eat up all the squishies, and fly away, and you get like reincarnation tokens that make you double hard to kill. If you're familiar with the Sky Tyrant, you know what he does. Yeah, so this is the other option that we can take X-Men stuffing. We can bring in these powerful monsters, brutes, and warriors, stuff like Blackheart, right? This guy's from the X-Men Rise and Fall set. If you open a lot of that set, you'll have him. He's another monster. Again, I'm mostly familiar with monsters, so if you know any brutes and warriors that would kind of fit into this strategy, let me know in the comments below, right? This piece, I'm not going to go over this piece. He's still got a lot of text on him. He's a monster. He's a demon on the battlefield. He summons a bunch of free guys, makes a million freeze attacks, is almost impossible to kill. This piece is crazy, right? Stuff like that we can just bring into the X-Men game plan, right? Now, that is all kind of sitting in the third or third and a half layer of the shenanigans that X-Men can do, right? The fourth layer, the final layer, is the most broken stuff that I've ever seen Heroclix figures do. We made a video on this a few months ago when we first heard about it. This uses a Magneto from, there's a lot of Magnetos, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Magneto from Uncanny X-Men, the Chase. So, this one, say you got a bunch of stuff up here that doesn't do anything, but he's got this ability. When building your force, you may choose a character of 150 points or less. That character has the X-Men keyword in this game, right? So now we can give anything the X-Men keyword. You can only give a 1-to-1 character, and he has 150 points, which is not ideal, because we're already trying to run Kate Pryde, Dazzler, Professor X, Magneto, or the Genesis, Apocalypse, now this Magneto, and something that we want to turn into an X-Men that's not a brute, warrior, monster, or technically we could turn our rockets into X-Men as well, but they're not, most of those are monsters anyways, right? So what are we doing? With this ability, we're using any of these Ultron drones. Any of them work. I use the Ultronate drone, also because it's uncommon, I think is the funniest, but all of these work. So all of these drones say, the figure costs 120 points, or costs 30 points and begins on click 1, after the orange KO. Until KO'd, the figure is considered 120 points. So what this means is that you pay 30 points to field the unit, then the Magneto will make it an X-Men, so you do not break theme team, and then it is treated as 120 points when Professor X swaps it off. Because remember, when you swap off with Professor X, you have to add up your point total and bring in the exact same number of figures with an equal or lesser point total. Now, you don't have to bring in as many points, but you can't bring in more points, right? That obviously makes sense. You can't swap out a 20-point piece for a 100-point piece, right? But you can do it the other way around, or you can do it with its Ultron. You pay 30 points to field the unit, and then it swaps off, and it by itself brings in a 120-point unit. That is some bullshit, right? So typically, what's going to be happening with this Magneto combo, as I'm calling it, right, is you got the 25-point Professor X, you've got the 30-point Ultron drone, you've got the 150-point Magneto, which is 205 points of your build already. We want to add on Genesis and Apocalypse, that's 70 points to bring monsters, Arakkans, brutes, and warriors into X-Men, right? That's 275 points. You have 25 points to play with. This is the problem that I've noticed, right? Most competitive events are 300-point events, right? So if we had 400 points to work with, this would be perfect, right? We just don't have that many points to work with, right? So I've got this Google spreadsheet. There's a bunch of stuff in here. Don't worry about half of it, right? But this is some of the stuff that I've been thinking about, right? So we've got these kind of X-Men groups here, right? So for adding keywords, we've got Apocalypse, we've got Genesis. They're both worth 35 points for a total of 70 points. Technically, they can be made worth 40 points each by giving them sword bearers, and then if you swap them off while they're still equipped with their sword, they drop their sword right at their feet, so that whoever brings in can just immediately pick it up. You don't have to go run around, do some sidestep shenanigans, or do some telekinesis shenanigans, you can just pick it up. But honestly, I haven't found that to be very useful. Then we've got this Magneto swap stuff. We got the Magneto for 150 points, the Professor X for 25, the Ultron drone for 30, and then these are the cheapest X-Men figures that are out there. Remember, when Professor X swaps out, he has to swap out and swap in everybody who has unique names. You can't swap anybody out. Any of those 10 can't share a single name, right? So these are the cheapest X-Men figures, the next student, the next trainee. You have to have one of each because you can't do multiple names. They're 15 points each. But that whole combo is 235 points. That's a lot of points for a 300-point team, right? And then we've got what we really want to be swapping, because that doesn't even use the Kate Pryde or the Dazzler or any of those beginning of the game shenanigans, right? For 65 points for the Kate Pryde, for the free Lockheed token, that perplex is incredibly useful. And then a 35-point piece for Dazzler to get the shield team ability to up your range on a lot of your pick figures, right? Also very nice. Then, so that is kind of the swapping out stuff, right? Some other stuff that I have found great success with is what I call the 5 M's core, right? Of Mimic, Moira McTaggart, and Multiple Man, the 5 M's, right? So we go look at these figures. Mimic, he's just going to show up as a Mimic. This Prime Mimic, he's got a couple different abilities, right? Mostly this traded thing, or that's not technically this traded thing, it's his movement ability, is Charged Flurry Plasticity, right? Then his traded power is Mimic can use the displayed standard attack and damage powers of all adjacent characters. Also, he flies, so he can carry somebody around, right? And then he, as a rally die, when your opponent rolls a 5, he gets a rally die. He can remove one of his rally dies, choose any friendly character within range, and his range is 8, which is kind of big. That's very large. You choose any power that they can use right now. Mimic can use that power the whole game, right? So he ends up collecting a list of things. When you combine that with this Moira McTaggart, this one, She can, as a special damage ability on her first and last click, power action, give an adjacent friendly character with the X-Men keyword a rally die, right? So we can give our Mimic his rally dice. And then if we use this Multiple Man, also she's only 20 points, then Mimic is 16, which is important to keep in mind. This Multiple Man on his 10-point line, so he's got some cool shenanigans. A lot of people like running his 40-point line because he brings a lot of value for 40 points, but I prefer his 10-point line for this team because he's got these abilities specifically. Remember, Mimic is copying all abilities of everybody he's standing next to, their displayed attack and damage ability. That is if they are a colored ability, so not something hiding in a white traded box, and if they are just like a normal showing up ability, right? So this Steel Energy and this Close Combat Expert is what we're grabbing with our Mimic, right? So if we go back to Mimic, and we keep these in mind when we're looking at his stats, he's got Charge, Flurry, with a 11 range, so he's got a 6 movement charge. We throw in a free telekinesis off of something like a Polaris from the Hellfire Gala set, or Venom Magneto will have free telekinesis. He can get quite far, quite quick. He's got 18 defense with that super senses, a 3 damage exploit weakness. When we're grabbing the passive abilities of everybody we're standing next to, we're carrying Multiple Man around, right? So off of Multiple Man, we're going to get Steel Energy for if we've been damaged. We can heal all the way up. And we're going to get Close Combat Expert. So we're actually going to be attacking with a 12 for 4. Throw in that Lockheed token from the Cape Pride, we're attacking with a 13 for 4, with a Flurry, right? And again, if we're hit, we're hurt, we're stealing energy, right? Now he does have his own Close Combat Expert that picks up a little bit later, but that's fine because when Moira McTaggart gives him a rally die, he can pick up probability control from somebody, he can pick up shape change off of the Venom Magneto, he can pick up a lot of permanent stuff. He can pick up Perplex off of the Lockheed, Perplex himself up again. He goes to a 13 or a 14, sorry, because it'd be Perplex from himself, to a 12, Perplex from the Lockheed, to a 13, and the Close Combat Expert to 14 for 4 damage. That's not bad. That's pretty penetrating damage. Flurry, you're gonna kill somebody, right? This is kind of my core aggro game plan. This is how I'm actually going to try and kill figures, right? They have to sync attacks into Multiple Man, which is annoying because he's a 10-point piece, right? And if they don't, Mimic is just going crazy. And even in the meantime, Mimic is still fine. Mimic is a fine piece, even without that Multiple Man. With that extra 10 points, he goes crazy, right? So this is what I call the 5 M's. This is what I want to be using to kill people, right? Now, Mimic Prime is 60 points, so we can bring him in after the swap. But I like having the Moira and the Multiple Man on the team because they're only 30 points, they don't take up much, and it's really hard to swap in those cheap pieces, right? Especially when we're swapping out so many points. Then we've got our movement group, right? So these are 3 figures. I want to have at least one of these on any team that I'm playing, unless I'm going for like a very specific targeted team, right? So we've got Venom Magneto, Polaris, and Pixie. So let's go look at those figures over here. Venom Magneto. All of these guys are basically doing one thing. This Venom Magneto is basically doing one thing. He's got telekinesis, and telekinesis is free. He also has flying and passenger 4. So this Magneto is very well known for just getting anybody on your team wherever you want. He's going to power action telekinesis somebody, free action telekinesis somebody else, or free action telekinesis bring somebody to him, then carry the whole squad out because he's got the passenger 4 with the flying. He's got leadership, so you're getting action tokens, your action totals, sorry. You're removing action tokens from your allies after you've dropped everybody off, right? So that's the Venom Magneto. We've also got the Polaris from the Hellfire Gala collection. She has 40 points. Again, we don't have the picture for this, which is annoying. But she also has telekinesis. Telekinesis is free, so she can free action, fling somebody, power action, fling somebody else. She also has flying, and she has outwit, which is nice, so that she can actually be turning off abilities. This piece is significantly cheaper to purchase than the Venom Magneto, though I do like the Venom Magneto more. That's obviously why he's a little bit more expensive. And then we've got this Pixie, the WizKids one. I have this Uncanny X-Men one. Unfortunately, this is not the good one. This WizKids one is the good one. You can see she's got Mystics, X-Men, she's got probability control, she's got phasing teleport, passenger 3 on this movement ability, and when she carried characters, the share a keyword with her, which is going to be the entire team, because everything's an X-Men, you can place those characters within 3 squares of her instead of adjacent. That's the big ability on this, right? You get to carry 3 people up, split them out, like you basically get to drop them 13 squares away, right? Because she's going to move 10 and then drop them 3 squares away. So you get to drop them 13, sometimes if they have a sidestep, 14, 15 squares away from where she started, right? That's crazy. It's just across the entire map, right? And then you get a probability control, and when you split everybody out like that, her lines of fire are not blocked, so she can probability control any of those attacks you're making during the turn, right? She is particularly effective with a figure like Maggot, because after you've been carried, obviously you can't take power actions, but Maggot can, as a free action, generate an Eenie or a Meanie bystander, unless Maggot's bystander, that same name, has been KO'd. Each has max 1. So you can drop Maggot off or 2 Maggots off since he's only 40 points. He's got his own probability control. He's also got his sidestep, so he can sidestep into position, drop off an Eenie or a Meanie, which are just kind of little piss poor little bystanders. I believe one of them has poison though, and when you generate a bystander, it has not been considered to be placed or moved that turn, so it can poison them and then attack them. And then, as a free action, Maggot can remove an adjacent Eenie or Meanie bystander from the map. If you do, you get some of their stuff and he can like heal a little bit, but the big thing is that you can free action, summon the Eenie, poison them, then free action, remove the Eenie, right? You just get free damage against your opponents, right? So this is kind of, these 3 movement figures are kind of what I want to have at least one of these on my team so I can get people in a position, right? So, with all that being said, the problem that we're running into is that we want to start Professor X so we can do swap out stuff. We have to be running it. That's the whole point of running X-Men, is to abuse this Professor X, right? That's the entire point of all of these teams. Everything revolves around Professor X. We need Professor X, right? We want to run the Magneto, which is 150 points. We want to run the Ultron drone, which is another 30 points. We want to run Genesis and Apocalypse, who we can swap out instead of the X students to get all of our keywords on everybody. We want to run Dazzler. We want to run Dazzler to get shield team abilities on everybody. We want to run Kate Pride so we can get our Lockheed token. We want to run Moira and Multiple Man for our Mimic setup. This total, unfortunately, is 405 points, which is a lot more than 300. It is significantly more than 300. Even if we cut Moira McTaggart and Multiple Man and Kate Pride and Dazzler, right, it's barely under 300, right? It's that 275 where we don't really have any points to move with, right? Can't run Dazzler, can't run Kate Pride, we can't run Moira and Multiple Man, we can't run any of those, right? We can run just Moira, we can run just Multiple Man. Just Moira is not awful, because then we can run a 5-point item, like one of the Disney Plus items, like one of the shields, or the Cloak of Levitation, or a Super Soldier Serum, something like that, is not awful, but again, it's not ideal, because in that case, we're using Genesis and Apocalypse to give nothing keywords, because we're swapping everybody out. Another big consideration when building an X-Men team is thinking about this, that's not how you spell it even, kind of, this Jubilee. The Jubilee from House of X. So she says free once per game for all friendly characters with this power, if it's your turn later, or if the map includes Otherworld. Turn Jubilee to click 7. Basically, in the comics, her kid is a dragon when he's in Otherworld, and so she turns dragon mode, right? All of her stats go way up, she gets way better abilities, all of these abilities actually come into play. She's an actual real figure at that point. She's only 50 points. So one of the things that X-Men team really likes to do is field a bunch of guys that all cost kind of not much points, right? Then swap five of them off, bring in your real figures, because since you have so many figures, you're more likely to win map roll, and then if you win map roll, you bring Jubilee in, you're on another world map, and Jubilee goes dragon mode, she starts blowing up your entire opponent's team. If you lose map roll, when you swap out, you just don't bring Jubilee in when you bring the rest of your team, because you know who's going first, you know you can see your entire opponent's team, so you can still counterpick them, and you can just not bring your Jubilee, right? So another thing that we want to keep in mind is we want to have like 7, 8, or 9 figures on our X-Men team so that we are more likely to be winning map roll, because this Jubilee figure can solo teams all by herself. She's insane, she's psychotic, right? So, with all this being said, there's a lot going on here, right? What I have figured out is that you kind of have to pick between the Magneto mode and the Genesis Apocalypse mode. You can't really do both. This right here was the best team that I could come up with doing both, right? So this is our starting team, this is what stays in on our team, this is what swaps out, and this is what swaps in, and this is our sideline, right? That's all how all this works. I just have a bunch of numbers here to make sure that my swap out math is good, but that's basically how this works. So we are basically, the final team is what stays in and what swaps in, right? So what stays in is Wendigo, who's 15 points. We're actually making use of our Genesis ability to bring monsters and Iraqans onto our team. And then we get the Power Gem, who we can equip to somebody. Doesn't really matter who. If we're winning map roll, it's probably going to be Jubilee. If not, it's probably going to be Mimic, right? Then, using the Ultron drone, who swaps out for 120 points, we can bring in Mimic, but we don't have the Multiple Man or the Moira, so he's just kind of trying to hard roll those 5s on your opponent's turns and live, because honestly, by himself, he's kind of hard to stay alive, right? You need some support to stay alive, in my opinion, after running him in many, many games. Then we bring in Exodus, who is one of our Krakoan Revival guys and has a very powerful ability. If you are not super familiar with that figure, go check out the video that we did with him. He was one of our first character tour videos. He's a crazy figure. I like this figure a lot, especially in the current meta where there's a lot of stock click figures. He tears through those. We bring in Jubilee. We bring in Jubilee if we win map roll. If we don't win map roll, that's what the Scarlet Witch here is for. We just want some other 50-point piece to bring in that isn't X-Men. And this Scarlet Witch is the one from Empire that can replace your opponent's rolls with a 1 on her rally die. Very useful figure. But again, we don't have Moira McTaggart to load her up on rally die, which is what I prefer to do. We got the Venom Magneto for massive placements around the board. Just throw our Power Gem everywhere. And then we've got this Beast. There's a Beast we haven't shown off on the channel before, most because I don't currently own the figure, but I'm going to be getting it soon, hopefully. This Beast is basically the anti-cosmic energy ability Beast. He says, opposing characters within range can't use Safeguard, Outwit, or Protected Outwit. And he's got range 6. That's basically it. You can outwit cosmic characters now with Beast or with anybody else who has Outwit. So you can just turn off their defenses and kill them, right? Or turn off whatever annoying thing they're using to make it hard to kill them, and then kill them, right? So this Beast is very nice. We get to run him at his 125 points. He's got some rally die shenanigans. Whenever you roll 1s or 2s, he gets rally die. Then you can remove them to gain cosmic energy ability, or all your characters can use the X-Men team ability is free. He's got some decent defenses with the 19 defend, bring everybody up, some probability control, some outwit, some stuff like that. He's a really good piece. So yeah, so we're bringing him in as like a kind of backup attacker next to our Mimic, Exodus, and Jubilee, and our Wendigo as well. Again, also a crazy figure. If you're not super familiar with this figure, go check out a lot of our videos. Many of our Monster Team videos. Basically, I think every video we made on a team in October has this Wendigo on it. This figure is a crazy piece. And then the Power Gem just gives whoever it's equipped to either Close Combat Expert or Range Combat Expert. I think he gets both, actually, and a +1 to their damage. So the most common equipped for that is going to be our Jubilee, who, when she goes Dragon Mode, has a 4 damage on her top click. The Power Gem is going to turn it into a 5 damage, and then it's going to give a Range Combat Expert, so she's going to go up to a 12 attack for 6 damage, right? With 2 targets. I think actually she goes to 3 targets. No, she only goes to 2 targets. But she has a range 8 because her modifier range +3. It's penetrating damage. She goes crazy, right? So this is kind of the mash-up team that I found, right? Now, I've taken a look at just doing Apocalypse Genesis things, right? And the best thing that I can come up with so far is this team right here, right? We've got a couple of different modes, because again, remember, one of the cool things about X-Men is you're able to counterpick your opponent, right? This team right here, one of the things it does is it doesn't counterpick your opponent very well, right? Admittedly, I haven't built out a whole sideline and a whole game plan for everything, but it kind of barely uses a lot of the things that we're doing, right? It technically uses the extra keywords, and it brings in some figures that are worth more than they should be because of the Ultron drone, right? Like you can see, we're ending on a 390-point team here, where everybody else is playing a 300-point team, right? Which is crazy, but we're not getting in crazy synergy, right? Mimic is just a good standalone piece. Exodus is a good standalone piece. Jubilee, Venom, Magneto, and Beast, they're all just good. And Wendigo with Power Gem. This is just kind of an aggro team, right? So if our opponent has a dedicated game plan, sometimes just an aggro team can't crack it. So we want to have that flexibility, right? So what I've come up with is what I call the Team Ability Abuse team, right? So we're not doing Magneto things. We're basically picking Apocalypse Genesis as our one that we're focusing in on, and we're bringing in a bunch of monsters and a bunch of shenanigans. Primarily relying on this Cypher, the one from the Organized Play event. We're running him at his 25-point line. So he's got this team player ability, which is very key because he's got this trait. It says friendly characters with the X-Men keyword within range can use the team ability chosen by Cypher for the team player team ability. This piece is crazy. He only has range 3, but in this team, you can see we're bringing Dazzler, right? So we're bringing Dazzler to give 2 of our guys the shield team ability, which will then buff the range of anybody they're standing next to. So if they're standing next to Cypher, they can up his range to 5, right? And what's curious is that if he picks the shield team ability, he will then up his range to 5, and then anybody next to him will get the shield team ability, and he'll up his range to 6, right? So you can definitely spread your team abilities around a lot with this. And then using the ability to have monsters, brutes, and warriors, technically rockets, on our team, we can really take advantage of this Cypher to spread team abilities throughout our team, right? So this is just the standard build that we're running. We've got our stays in and our swaps in for our actual final team, right? We're swapping out our Dazzler after giving shield team ability. We're swapping out our Cape Pride after getting our little Perplex guy. We're swapping out our Genesis and our Apocalypse and our Professor X. All those are gone off the team, but we're left with Moira McTaggart and Multiple Man. We're bringing in Mimic, so we've got that core going. We got our 5 M's. Got a good core there. Just occurs to me that I definitely, this Genesis shouldn't be here, but that's fine. That it still works out. So we've got our Multiple Man and our Moira, and then we've got the Commissioner. So this piece is crazy, right? The commish, as a lot of people call him. 25 points for police team ability, which is basically the DC's version of Hydra. When an adjacent friendly character makes a ranged attack, modify the target's defense by -1 if the target is with the line of fire of this character, right? So he can drop opponents' defenses, right? And when Cypher is copying the police team ability, everybody on your team can drop their defense, right? Now, it maxes at -3, but that's still a crazy drop when you're making range attacks with something like an Exodus or a Jubilee. We've also got the Underworld team ability that says Passenger 1, but only carry a character that shares a keyword. Passenger 2 for characters that share a keyword and with less points. Everybody on this team is going to have X-Men because of all of their team shenanigans, so we can just anybody can carry anybody. One Cypher is giving this to the whole team, right? Also, in the beginning of the game, this commissioner will make the rookie token. Let's see if it shows up. Hey, rookie, there he is. This rookie has the Batman and ally team ability, right? It also has the police ability, but this just says stealth, right? So if you lose map roll and you aren't taken to an otherworld map and you see there's a bunch of hindering, you can just summon the rookie token and then everybody on your team has stealth the entire game, right? This can destroy many teams, right? Just a permanent stealth to your whole board is super brutal for a lot of people to get through, especially since it's at range 5, right? Everybody that's within 5 squares of that Cypher is going to have stealth. So if they can't see through characters, 1, they can't see your guy anyway, right? And 2, you can just wall him behind a bunch of guys, and you've got Exodus for Cone Revival, so even if they do manage to kill him, you can just bring him right back, and everybody still has stealth, right? This is kind of the core for what this Cypher is building around, right? And then we've got this 50-point flex slot. Now for the 50-point flex slot, I've got a couple different options here. Because again, we're trying to grab team abilities off everything. So we've got this Super Scroll from Empire. He's got the Guardians team ability, which means none of your combat values can be modified by opposing characters' effects, negatively or positively, right? So you would sometimes like to be modified positively by opponent's effects, because generally that's going to be good, but not always. But you can copy this with your Cypher and then give it to your whole team if you're running into a police team or something like that. Or you can grab Scrolls, where your entire team now has shape change. None of these figures start with shape change. I believe that the Venom Magneto has super senses. Oh, it might have shape change. But yeah, so your entire team has shape change. Now it's only shape change on a 6, but it's still all of your team has shape change, right? One of those is going to hit throughout the course of the battle, right? So that's quite nice. We've also got this Wonder Woman. Ooh, it's this one? No. Is it this one? No, it is this one. It's this one, yeah. So this is the 50-point Wonder Woman. We've got the Mystics team ability on her. Unfortunately, that is uncopyable, so we cannot grab that and spread it to our whole team with Cypher. But we do have the Wonder Woman team ability, which is the exact same thing as the Skrull team ability, but for super senses, which is slightly better because a lot of our guys actually have super senses. And if you already have super senses, then your super senses roll gets increased by 1 when you make it, and you have the Wonder Woman team ability. So this gives another rollout to a lot of our characters that don't have it and are squishy, like our Cypher, like our Commissioner, like our Rookie, and now anybody who already has super senses like Moira McTaggart or Mimic get it on a 50% of the roll. It's a 4, 5, or 6, right? Very, very nice. Also useful for countering people with Precision Strike, because Precision Strike will drop your super sense roll by -1. The Wonder Woman team will put it +1, so you're back at a normal roll, which is very nice. Also, notably, this Wonder Woman has an actually useful trait. The Super Scroll is like kind of quirky. It's mostly its team abilities that we're pulling from. Its abilities are not amazing. This Wonder Woman is, right? So she says, once per game, for all friendly characters with this trait, when a friendly standard character would be KO'd, you may instead turn that figure to their last non-KO click, then roll a d6 and heal them equal to half the result, right? So, anytime one of our guys is about to die, we can either save them with this Wonder Woman or Cocoon revive them with Exodus, right? So, this gives our team a lot of staying power, and it's very hard to crack through. So if they do want to kill Cypher to turn off all the shenanigans, 1, they're going to deal with all of our attackers, and 2, they're going to have to kill him like 3 or 4 times in order to keep him dead, right? Then the last one we've got here is Sky Tyrant. He's not really like a team key team ability thing that we're abusing. We can technically copy this. When a character hits an opposing character with an attack roll of 10 or 12, 10, 11, or 12, after its solution to move an action token from this character. This is the same ability as the Brotherhood of Mutants team ability that our Venom Magneto already has, so we're not really gaining anything by putting this on the team. But again, with a power gem, this thing goes crazy, right? As close combat expert, +1 damage, hitting with a 12 for 5, flurry, penetrating, he's going to kill people, right? He's going to fly into your opponent's team, he's going to kill all their squishies, take out a carrier or 2, be super hard to kill. He's also X-Men now, so we can also Cocoon revive him, which is insane, right? Because it's already almost impossible to kill with his reincarnation tokens. Now, while being able to Cocoon revive him, on top of all of that, he goes crazy, right? So this is the other option that I was thinking for this team, right? So this is the normal, standard team, you bring in Jubilee because you're assuming we winning map roll. You're bringing Exodus to try and kill them all. Actually, no, this is the base one. Bringing Mimic, we're bringing Cypher, we're bringing Jubilee, bringing the Retaliator Magneto, and we're bringing Venom Magneto. Notably, if you're using the Magneto swap version, you cannot bring in this Retaliator Magneto because his name is not actually Retaliator Magneto. It's just Magneto. He's the white Magneto from House of X. He just has like kind of shitty Retaliator ability, but he's very useful because it's free attacks. So because that Magneto that gives your drone the X-Men keyword is a Magneto, and this guy's also just a Magneto, you can't bring this piece. So this is one of the other reasons why I'm kind of valuing this Apocalypse and Genesis mode more, is because I really like this piece and I want to bring it, right? Venom Magneto is technically a different name than just Magneto, so you don't have to worry about that on either version, but I do really like this Retaliator Magneto. He's quite a good piece. Also, coming in at 25 points, he's one of the few really high value 25 point pieces. If you look at our sideline here, you'll see we have 3 of those in Cypher, the Retaliator Magneto, and Peepers, who we'll come to in a minute. This is important, right? So another one of the nice things about this mode is that we can tech it to whatever our opponent's doing. So if they're bringing characters with stock clicks, we want to fit Exodus onto the team. So in that case, we'll bring Jubilee, Exodus, the Retaliator Magneto, Peepers, and Cypher. Peepers has the cool ability where whenever he's carried, whoever is carrying him gets +2 to their speed. This is after they have been modified by, or after they've been replaced by running shot or charge. Exodus here has running shot with a, I believe it's a 5 move or a 6 move on his top dial. I think it's a 5 move on his top dial. So Peepers, when he's being carried by Exodus, can bring that up to a 7 move with a, I believe he also has a 7 range crazy mind control that will deal damage past a stop click. Throw in a, actually we don't have the Venom Magneto on this team because Peepers is kind of our way to get that extra reach, right? Jubilee is throwing in damage. We've still got Multiple Man and Moira on this team, even though we don't have Mimic, which means that the Moira and the Multiple Man are going a little bit to waste. We've got our Professor X here. He can still do outwits. We've got the Commissioner to bring police team ability. In this version of the team, the Moira and the Multiple Man and the Professor X are just going to be kind of spreading that police team ability around so that you can kind of give all of your range attacks with Exodus and Jubilee those drops, those -3 drops to make sure they're hitting and they're killing anything in their sight, right? Then we've got versus a Cosmic team where we want to bring that Beast that can outwit Cosmic team abilities so that we can turn off their defenses and just murder them with something like Mimic. So we only have these 2 as our attackers here. We've got the Commissioner, and we've got Genesis. Genesis can technically make attacks, so we're just kind of bad at it. And this time we didn't actually swap out our Genesis. But we've got Beast, who can make decent attacks, Mimic, who can make really good attacks when it's combined with Moira and Multiple Man, and we've got Cypher to give all our team abilities. Peepers is an optional carry by Mimic if you need the extra range. He loses the Close Combat Expert and the Steel Energy from carrying the Multiple Man around instead, but he gets that extra 2 range on his movement, so he goes to an 8 charge with a Flurry charge. He's still an 11 attack for 3 damage on a Flurry, still not bad. We got the Retaliator Magneto, we got the Beast. This is just trying to take up their Cosmic pieces that are being incredibly annoying, out with their defenses, and just one-shot them with our Mimic, right? Or 2 attacks with a Flurry or whatever, right? But we kill the shit out of them, right? Then, what happens if we run into, I'm not sure how popular this is going to be. So let me know how popular you guys think this is going to be in the comments for just the 300 points of the Apocalypse or the Genesis. I've heard some buzz that people are thinking about this, right? And last time we went to a tournament, I was told that nobody's going to be running the Thanos, the crazy broken legacy card Thanos, right? I was told nobody's going to be running that because nobody's run that in the past few tournaments, and that was true. And then half the field ran that Thanos, so I didn't bring a team for that Thanos. I didn't bring a version of my X-Men for that Thanos, and I got my shit rocked, right? So I have been told by people that nobody's running the Apocalypse and the Genesis, right? They're just not good enough by themselves. There's no tournament results with those, but I have a sneaking suspicion they're going to show up anyways. So this is my kind of combo kill to beat that team, right? So we need to get outwitting their defense, so we need the Beast in. And then we need a way to kill them past their stop clicks. So these figures have 4 stop clicks and mystics the whole way down. And they often show up with the Soul Sword, which can heal them off of their stop clicks after they hit you with their mystics. So we either need a lot of Invincible or a way to kill them past their stop clicks. And the Jean Grey from the Hellfire Gala comes in here. So if we go over to that Jean Grey, we can see right here, her 40-point line. She has got this mind control on her special movement power. It's her whole dial down. It can be outwit, but then remember, we can just outwit their outwit if they've got that, right? Because again, B says that you will not have protected outwit if you're Cosmic, right? So we've got mind control. When Jean Grey uses it after resolution to deal a hit character damage equal to its own printed damage value. If we take a look at the Apocalypse and the Genesis have almost identical dials. Their numbers are the same way all the way down. We can see that they have a 6 damage on their top dial, right? So they have a 20 defense with Invincible, and Cosmic Energy, 2 Stop Clicks. All of these white boxes are Stop Clicks. So we got 2 Stop Clicks right away, 4 total on the dial, and 6 damage. This is crazy, right? So luckily, both of these figures are very melee based, right? So this Apocalypse has a phasing teleport, and then he attacks, and then the Genesis, I'm not going to know how to time back these back and forth, we'll see, has a charge flurry, right? That's how she hits you, right? So the Genesis has a 6 movement, basically. There's a sword that can give them giant reach 3, so she functionally has a 9 movement. And then the Apocalypse has a much farther movement, but the Genesis is a little more popular, I find, because it does more damage consistently. The Apocalypse has a 12 plus that giant reach 3, puts him to a 15 squares of movement, which is a lot. It's very hard to run from that, right? And since this is a phasing ability, he's very hard to pin down. But I think I figured something out with this Jean Grey, right? So we look at this team again. We've got the Commissioner, we've got our own Apocalypse and Genesis to potentially pressure damage, right? Not ideal, but potentially to do it. We've got this Moira and this Multiple Man, who are often going to be picking up our shields ability from our Dazzler, since they're staying on every version of this team, right? Then we bring in Beast to outwit the defenses, Cypher to spread our team abilities, Venom Magneto to get everybody in position, and Jean Grey to actually kill them, alright? So this is the goal. We get into a position where Cypher is giving the police team ability to our whole team, right? So, when our whole team can see them, can see the target, their defense is being dropped by 3. So we go back to our Apocalypse, their defense is now a 17, right? This Cypher also has Perplex, so he's going to Perplex up Jean Grey's attack. Normally it's, I believe, an 11. Let's double check. It's an 11 attack here, right? So we're going to Perplex up that attack to a 12, and then since we started with our Cape Pride, we get that Lockheed token, it's also going to Perplex up her attack to a 13. So we've got a 13 versus a 17. That's a 4 or better. We've got our 3 theme probs, that's all we need, right? Then, since we got our police team ability from the Commissioner, we've got our Perplexes up, we need to fling her into position. So, Venom Magneto will TK her into position, right? So now she can see the Apocalypse, right? And we can do this from outside of that range with our police team ability. The Commissioner and the Rookie token both have police team ability. And if we need to, while we're hiding, because these guys can make ranged attacks as well, we can give them all stealth with the Batman allied team ability, right? Off of our Cypher. So they can't shoot us, so they have to come into melee with us. And once they position themselves to be able to come into melee with us next turn, we can execute the combo. Venom Magneto will telekinesis Jean Grey into position. Then, Venom Magneto will carry everybody up next to her, putting the police guys in the front so that they are all adjacent to Jean Grey and able to see the Apocalypse, right? Then, Jean Grey will get perplexed up, and Jean Grey will mind control him. He's been dropped by 3 for the police team ability, she has been up by 2 from your 2 perplexes, and your Moira McTaggart and your Multiple Man have shield. So, they are increasing her range from a 6 to an 8. So with the telekinesis of 6 and the range of 8, you are now 14 squares away, right? So, technically, if they have the giant reach 3 sword, you can't super get into range of the Apocalypse, but that is uncommon, I have found. And, technically, it's unlikely they're going to be sitting at their exactly max range. They're just going to kind of eyeball and think, I can get anywhere I want. So you can sit maybe just on the edge, right? So, you want to line this up, where you can make that attack. Then, you outwit their defense with your Beast, and Jean Grey makes the mind control attack. 13 to the 17, with 3 probability controls, you should be able to hit, right? Again, they're only going to have 1 probability control, because they're only going to have 1 character on their team, so that you're going to hit this, right? Then, you mind control them closer to you, you can mind them control them, do whatever the fuck you want. They're going to then hit themselves for their damage. Using the Apocalypse here, if it loads, that is 6 damage. So it's going to deal 6 damage to itself. It doesn't have a defense, and this damage is not from an attack, so it bypasses stop clicks. It also ignores mystics, because this is each time this character takes damage from opposing characters, an attack. The damage is not part of the attack. It is a side effect of the attack. Technically, not an attack. Very bullshit, I know, but technically true. I've checked this multiple times with multiple judges. So, we deal 6 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on a click 7, right? With his 18 defense. Then, we can have anybody else on our team outwit that defense now, because it is technically a new defense, and hit them, right? Now, unfortunately, the Commissioner... Nope, I always spelled this wrong. Commish has this way to power action once per... no, never mind. Power action, choose an adjacent friendly character that shares a keyword with the Commissioner. They're all X-Men. The chosen character can make an attack using its printed combat values. After resolutions of the missed all targets, give them an action token, right? This does not allow our girl Jean Grey to make a mind control attack, unfortunately. But he's got outwit, so he can outwit that defense, and our Beast, who is at our 75-point line, can make that attack. He's got a charge, Blades, Claws, Fangs, right? He's also got his own Mystics ability, and he's got Defend, Invulnerable, Super Senses, so he's a little hard to kill once they've been brought down to that click, right? Mostly what we're trying to do here is just take them off of their top dial, right? If Jean Grey lives, that's the big question. If Jean Grey lives, then we just do it again next turn and they kill themselves, right? Go back to that Apocalypse. Once we make a second attack, and we have lots of leaderships on this team to try and remove her action tokens, so she can always make that second attack. We're on this click 7. We out with their defense, we mind control them again. This time they're an 18, dropping by 3 to a 15, perplexing up our Jean Grey back to a 13. Only a crit miss will miss, and that's only technically because it's a crit miss. Technically a 2 would still hit that, because again, it is a 13 to a 15. So literally any attack will hit. They have their probability control, but again, literally any attack will hit. And then they deal 4 damage themselves. 1, 2, 3, 4 onto their last stop click. This stop click is an invincible Super Senses click, but when we make Jean Grey do her extra attack, she is doing precision strike damage. So it doesn't matter that they have Invincible, because we're still going to do 1 damage. It doesn't matter that they have Super Senses, because they're going to roll 1 less. So they have a 1 in 6 chance of living that attack, right? The Commissioner will let Jean Grey make another attack after she has made her first attack, and it is going to be a damage attack, not a mind control attack, but she will kill the Apocalypse. So, same thing happens with the Genesis, right? Except that the Genesis has even less range, so it's more likely to go off actually with the Genesis. And because the Genesis has more offensive pressure than the Apocalypse tends to, I've found that more people are more likely to run that Genesis. And this team actually works better against the Genesis, which is the more popular of the two. So, this is what I have come up with. Again, I have not delved super deep into the Magneto swap just because of how point hungry it is. It is the minimum amount of points that you can run for this team to work is 235. That leaves you 65 points to actually have on your board before you swap, right? We want to be using at least 30 of that with the Moira and the Multiple Man, which leaves you not much, right? Say you want to be swapping out this Cape Pride and this Dazzler instead of these guys. That's a few extra points. I think you can barely squeeze it. I did the math on this a while ago. You can barely squeeze it in with the Cape Pride. I don't believe you can fit the Dazzler. I can do the math on it real quick, but I'm not going to. But this is the X-Men problem that I'm looking at right now. There is too many things that they are doing. They're doing cool keyword shenanigans. They're doing cool point math to give you an extra 90 points on your team with the drone stuff. But you can't do all of it. You're also doing cute abuse the beginning of the game stuff, right? And you're comboing that with your keywords, but you can't do all of it, right? You're counterpicking your opponent, can't do everything. That's the problem. So, if you guys have any ideas for teams kind of abusing the Magneto side of things with the extra points, or other versions of these kind of teams that are using the Apocalypse and the Genesis to get more keywords on your team, what would you guys suggest? I know that just literally copying over the best figures from the monster team and throwing a couple X-Men on top of it with like the Dazzler and the Cape Pride for good juice is funny, but I don't think it's good because it feels like you're just playing a bad version of monsters instead of a unique thing, right? I don't want to be playing a bad version of another team. I want to be playing the best version of my team, right? So, I know this has been kind of a long video. I know there's been a lot of information. I haven't gone super deep into a lot of these characters. Again, I've had the HC Realms figures up for most of these figures. If you've ever wanted to pause the video at any time, please go back and go for it. Read through these figures. Look them up on your own time. All these figures, I think, are competitively viable in their own scenarios. So all of these are things that I would get the David sign off on, right? Now, I want your guys to sign off. I think this is a very fun, exciting challenge. There's a lot of ways to take this team, and I want to see what you guys can come up with your own special brand of shenanigans. The Heroclix community is a very special one, near and dear to my heart. I know that you guys can come up with some shenanigans that I have definitely missed. At least I'm hoping you can, for some stuff that we can bring to Vegas. And if you give me some suggestion that I use, even if it's not the whole team, even if it's just one piece on your suggestion that I end up using in that team, if I do well on this tournament, if I get top 8, I will give you personally a shout out in the little article write-up that they write about your team. I'll make sure that they put your name in that stuff. A little bit of extra incentive to try and help out with this as much as you can. Because I think it would be very cool to show up with a community brewed team and give credit back to the community that deserves it. So, I know this has been a long video, guys. That's basically it. So a lot of shenanigans that the X-Men are doing, almost too much, and I need to narrow down on what they're doing. And my brain wants to do it all, because I love my shenanigans. And this team is the most competitively viable shenanigans thing that I have ever seen in any game ever, right? Normally your gimmick stuff don't actually work. This gimmick stuff looks like it fucks. So that's what we're looking to do today. If you guys like the video, if you guys have any suggestions at all, please leave them in the comments. Please give the video a like. Please give this a subscribe. Share this to all your friends who are shenanigan-minded like ourselves, and see if they can throw any inputs in our way. We'll definitely be looking at these comments for the next couple weeks, probably even months to come, for more shenanigans ideas to come. And with that, thank you very much for watching this video. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.